Okay, so although today's daf is daf kuf samach vav, the Gemara is going to be referring back to a brisa that was introduced right after the Mishnah on kuf samach and base. So I'm going to quickly review that brisa. So we're right up to the Gemara at the bottom of kuf samach and base, right under the Mishnah. Tanu Rabbanan, Kesef. The Bach takes out the word Omar. Kesef ein pachos midina kesef. If all the star says is that Reuven owes me kesef, it would mean a dinner of kesef. Kesef dinrin, which now implies there's two things involved, because dinrin is plural, or v'dinrin kesef. It doesn't make a difference if the word kesef came first or if the word dinrin came first. Ein pachos mishnei dinrin kesef. That means two dinar kesef. Kesef bid dinrin, that sounds like ein pachos mi bishnei dinrin zov of kesef. So how much kesef do I owe? Kesef bidinrin, for the value of 2 dinar zov. Amar mar. So now the Gemara analyzes this brisa. Kesef ein pachos mi dinar kesef. Correct the Gemara, if someone says kesef, who says he means a coin? Maybe he means a little nugget of silver, which could be even less than a coin. Ve'emon nascha, Amar Belazar, the kasef be matbeya. It says matbeya shel kesef, so that's how we know it must be a coin. And the coin that we're talking about is a dinar of kesef. Frek Gemara ve'ema priti. Who said it's a bigger coin? Maybe it's a tiny little coin. Amar Papa Basra the loisogi priti the kaspa. We're talking about a city or a place where they didn't have penny coins out of silver. The smallest silver denomination was a dinar. Tanarabban. Dahav. Now we have exactly the same Gemara referring to gold. Dahav, ein pachas medina dahav, not less than a dinar dahav. Dahav dinyan, or a dinyan dahav. There we say, ein pachos mishnei dinyan dahav. What if you said dahav bidinrin? Then we'll say it means gold. How much gold? The value of 2 dinar kesef. Ein pachos mi bishnei dinrin kesef of dahav. One of the things that the Gemara is going to be analyzing is, what do dinar mean? When you say dinarim, do you mean kesef? Or when you say dinarim, do you mean zav? Clearly, in these two brises, it seems like they're interchangeable. Amar mar, the yukim we made earlier. Dahav, ein pachas medina dahav. Eimon nascha, maybe he just means a small nugget of gold. Amar belazar, the cost of matbeya. The star says that it's a coin. Frek Gemara ve'ema priti, maybe it's a much smaller golden coin. So now we're on daf kuf samach vav amar aleph. Zot Gemara priti the dahava loy avdi inchi. People don't make ever prutos made out of gold. It's just interesting to notice the difference between what the Gemara said when we were talking about kesef. That in this city there were no such small denominations, but some people do make such small denominations. But with zov, there's no such thing as this smaller coin of zov. Okay, what if someone said zov bedinrin? So we say ein pachos mishnei dinar and kesef of zov. The value of 2 dinar of kesef, that's how much I owe you in gold. Frank the Gemara, who said it means? It's referring to silver. The emo dahava pricha betrayed dinri dahava come. Maybe when he says zov bedinrin, he means I'm not going to give you a coin. I owe you just little nuggets of gold. But how many nuggets of gold? Nuggets of gold that are equivalent to the value of 2 dinar of gold. Why do you jump back to silver? In fact, you're right. It's possible that that's what was meant in the star, that he's giving him the value of 2 dinar zov. But we don't know that for sure. And the star could only prove what it absolutely for sure means, not what it might mean. And therefore, it only mechayev the person 2 dinarim of silver worth of gold. So there's a little bit of an issue here with the girsa. The Rashbam is here. Ihachi Reisha Dami should have the same halach. So let's see the Rashbam. The Rashbam explains that this is a dual kasha. Yochi Reishanami, Bain the Idich Braisa Kamaisa. Sai in the first Braisa referring Kesef, referring to Kesef. The Katani, it says, Kesef Bedinrin. What did we say there? Ein Pochus Mishnei Dinarin Didahav of Kesef. Right? It means I'm giving the value of 2 dinars of, but I'm giving it to you in silver. Why don't you say over there, Nema Yad Habal, Yad Bal Shal Tachtoina, and therefore, V'havalonu Lefarish Grutois Kesef, B'shnei Dinar Kesef. There we should have, since we said it's possible that it means that, and by Zov we didn't translate it that way because you want to, the star only proves the lesser of the different options of what it can mean. So, but a case of silver, it's the opposite. If someone said Kesef Bidinrin, why do we say he has to give Kesef for the value of 2 gold coins? Let's say he just gives some chunks of Kesef that's equivalent to 2 dinarim of Kesef. Because that's clearly Gemara, that's a possibility of what the star means. And if that's the lowest possible value that it could mean, that's what we should say. So that's kasha number 1 of Ihachi Reishanami. And kasha number 2 is Uvein the Hachmas Nisa. Even Minei Ubei, this brisa that talks about Zov itself. The Katani, the Hav Dinyan, the Dinyan the Hav, that means Ein Pachas Mishnei Dinar Zov. Maybe you should touch that as silver. Nema Ein Pachas Mishov Shnei Dinar and Kesef of Zov. If I said Dinyan, Dinyan the Hav, maybe Dinyan of Kesef, that's how much gold I'm going to give you. So once again, if you're always looking to translate the star to mean the lowest liability, so then why would you look at the case of Dinyan Zov that you have to give him Zov? Zog to Gemara a big chiddush. Amar Ravashi Reisha the cause of Dinrei, Seifa the cause of Dinrin. It makes a difference if you use the words Dinrei or Dinrin. Now, the way we read our brisa, it doesn't say Dinrei, it says Dinrin. But I guess we're amending the brisa to say Dinrin and Dinrei. Now, the way it works is Dinrin is a generic term. I'm giving you some dinarin. When you're saying generically, I'm giving you some dinarin, then that would probably mean kesef. But if you say dinrei, dinrei is half of a phrase. Dinrei really requires that you say dinrei, dinarim of. You'd have to either say kesef or zov, right? So dinrei really tells us that we're missing one piece of information. What are these dinarim made out of? So let's have a look at the Rashbam. Reisha, the cost of dinrei, the mashma dinrei zahov. And that's why in the Reisha, we said kesef, but dinrei, it means the value of silver. Aval dinrin stam, mashma shal kesef. But when someone uses the word dinrin stam, it's mashma shal kesef. Umina temra. Okay, so this really needs to be unpackaged because now we're going to bring rayas that that's the case. But it really needs to be packaged because let's actually read the brisa through using these words and see how it works out for us. Tanu Rabban, kesef. If you said plain kesef, then ein pachas medina kesef, kesef dinrei, but this has to be kesef dinrin. The dinrin kesef ein pachas mishnei dinrin kesef. So this probably also is dinrin because we mean kesef over here. Kesef bedinrei. Here's where you have to change it. Kesef b'dinrei. So b'dinrei is missing the word zov. There we would say it means zov. Ein pachos mi b'shnei dinarin zov of kesef. Right, that's how we'd have to read the brisa based on the teretz that we just said. Now let's go weiter and let's look at the Tanur Rabbanan. The hav ein pachos b'dinrei zov. The hav dinrin, that would have had to be the hav dinrei, because dinrin we said also implies kesef. Right, this was the second problem that the Gemara asked. The hav dinrei v'dinrei the hav. Then you say in pachos mishnei dinarin of zahav. And the hav b'dinrin, again dinrin implies kesef, and pachos mishnei dinarin kesef of the hav. So that's how we would have to explain it. Tosfos has a longer arichos, very detailed arichos on examining exactly how all these words fit in. Okay, so let's see the Gemara. So the Zok to Gemara. Oh, I'm a little bit lost. I don't know where I am over here. Here we are. Okay. Umina Tamra, the shiny ben dinre the dinrin. Where did you get this from? Zakter Ashbam Umina Tamra, the shiny lawn ben dinre the dinrin. Shazeh dinin shal kesef v'zezahav. Where do you know? Where do you see in a brisa? Where do you see a source for such an argument? So before I go weiter, I forgot to mention Rabbi Razin spoke out a chasuk chemet. Somebody wrote out a check to tzedakah. Now we learned yesterday before the Mishnah. We learned how when there's contradictory terms in the star, you give focus not to what it said right at the beginning of the star, rather what it says in the middle of the star. The Gemara asks, so why do you have any information at the beginning of the star? The Gemara says so that if there's something missing, there's something erased in the text in the middle of the star, you can use the information from the top of the star to clarify it. Okay, we're not referring to the last line of the star, which you always disregard. We're talking about something that's written in the middle of the star. That's what we learned in the Mishnah a couple of days ago. So there was an actual case where someone wrote out a check to tzedakah, and in the place where you fill in the dollar amount with numbers, he wrote $300, and in the part where you fill it out in writing, he wrote $3,000. And the organization reached out to the donor and said, "There's a discrepancy in your check. Did you mean to give 300, or did you mean to give 3,000?" And he says, "You know what? I don't remember. I don't remember." So the question is, how much does he have to give the Moshe? So the Shaila came to Rabbi Zilberstein, and he said, you for sure go Basra the writing. Why? Because it's logical that someone could have missed out a zero. But when you're writing it out, it's not logical that you would have written the word 1,000 if you really meant the word 100. So he paskined that he owes $3,000. Okay. Zok to Gemara weiter. The time. The organization fault. That wasn't zero. The organization would have. But I guess they didn't want to do that because there's a tenfold difference in the two things. Okay. Zok with the Tanya we learned. For Isha shahayu Allah safek chomesh leidos and safek chomesh zivos. Now the halacha is when a woman gives birth, it's liable. She becomes liable to bring a chatos and an oila, and this is one of the korbanos that, depending on how much a person can afford, that's what level of korban they're going to bring. We're assuming we're referring to dalos, which means they're only going to bring a bird. So therefore, the halacha is a woman who gives birth has to bring a korban. Now, what if she has 5 safek leidos, which means she gave birth to some type of the mush? We don't know. Is this an actual leida or is it not a leida? We weren't sure. Is it a ruach or is it a leida? So 5 times she became a chuyev misafek on the korban, and safek chamazivos. The halacha is when a woman becomes a safek gedayla. The halacha is once she becomes Torah, before she can eat kachim again, she has to, and before she becomes Torah, she has to bring also a pair of birds, echad lachatos ve'echad la'olam. Here, the problem is they're both, everything's safek over here. The reason why we safek chamazivos is because she might not know where in the cycle she was, and therefore there's confusion. But the problem is here she's only mechuyev misafek. You can't bring a korban misafek, and the oil you could bring misafek. You can say if I owe it for my chiyuv, I'm bringing it. If I don't know it, it's in the dava. But a chatos you can't bring with the dava. So how does she get out of her situation to be able to eat kachim, to be able to be tar? So the halach is maybe mevia, she brings korban echad. She brings one korban, one chatos only, and that will allow her vaycheles b'svachim. She'll be able to eat korbanos. Ve'ein ashar aleh chayva, but she doesn't have to bring the rest of the korbanos. And right, the Rishpam tells us she's not allowed to bring the other korbanos because you can't bring a safek chatos. Why they let her have one, we'll see in a minute. Now, it's very interesting to note that we, Legabe Hilchos Nida, consider every Re'iyah as if it's a full ziva, right? That's why for Tibas Dam Chakikadel, we are makbid to sit Jivanakim. Really, nida midaraisa is not shiva nekiyim. She sees dam nida, so for 7 days she's tamei. No matter how much blood she sees, it doesn't matter. At the end of 7 days, she makes a hefsek tire. She tovels and she's tar. Ziva is only if in the times that she would not normally not see dam nida, and that is during the 11 days between nida and nida. If she saw dam there 3 days in a row, there she becomes a zava gedayla, and there she has to keep 7 nikiyim. We keep 7 nikiyim for everything, and it's brought down in the Poiskim, in the Rishonim, that when Mashiach comes and we have our Beis Hamikdash, we're going to go back to the old way. Why? Now, since we're not clear about dam, we can get confused. To be extra safe and to make sure our relations will always be pure, we are makbid to treat everything like Ziva Gedolah. But in the Beis HaMikdash stuff, you can't get away with that. Because for a Ziva Gedolah, you bring a carbon. For a Nida, you don't bring a carbon. So if we treat everything like Ziva Gedolah, we're going to be bringing Hul and Lazara. So we'll be forced to now make a clear distinction between Ziva and Nida. And then I guess that's going to be a time where we're more enlightened and we won't be confused and we'll be able to be clear as to what Ziva is and what Nida is, and therefore we will have to bring Karbanos again. So this was talking about a woman b'shas the Beis HaMikdash. I never
So
noticed that.
Even in Bais Sheni, they didn't yet institute the.
I don't think so, because they have a chiv to bring Karbanos, and how are they going to want to bring a carbon?
So when was that instituted?
Well, it's still going. L'moshel, when Mashiach comes, our wives are going to have to bring a carbon for every child that they had. We're still there's still been a chiv triggered for the Leda. And technically, if our wives ever became a real Ziva, there's a chiv triggered that when Mashiach comes, they're going to have to bring a whole bunch of karbanos of Ziva. Just like for every shogig we were over, we're also going to have to bring karbanos. I don't know who's keeping track, but the Gemara tells stories about people who kept track, right? There was there was the Tana who thought that he doesn't have to be concerned about reading from a light, from a fire, and he was mate, and he said, "Oh, I'm going to have to bring a chata shmeina. I'm going to have to bring a fat chatas when Mashiach comes." So we're actually racking up quite a bill nowadays.
At what point were they not clear what a zav was?
No, we are clear, but we're afraid people will get confused. We are clear. We know Ziva means a woman who sees Dam Nida not during the time where she's supposed to see Dam Nida. But if you keep a very meticulous cheshbon, you'll be able to know that. The reason why it gets a little bit more confusing for us is because we have a machlokes Rishonim to deal with. Most poets can learn that Nida and Ziva is as follows. Whenever a woman sees Dam Nida, meaning she hasn't seen for a while, she's clean, and she sees Dam. The first time she sees Dam, that's Dam Nida. And that Dam Nida period lasts for 7 days. After that 7-day period starts an 11-day period, that if she sees Dam in that 11-day period, she will be considered a Zava. If she sees once or twice, she's a Zava Ktana. But if she sees 3 times, 3 days in a row, then she becomes a Zava Gedolah. But the Rambam learns differently. The Rambam learns that the moment a woman reaches puberty, from then there's an ongoing cycle of 7-11, 7-11, 7-11. Which means it doesn't matter, even if someone hasn't seen Dam for months, and she sees Dam, you have to know where she is in her cycle, and you got to keep track of that. So because of that, we mamish don't know where we're holding, because we don't know. I mean, most people don't pass like the Rambam. The Rambam is a Shita Yochid in this Shita, but so there will be a lot of things that we'll have to clarify to know where we're holding. Okay. It also compromises the privacy of our wives, because they're always bringing karbanos. So but that's how it goes. But we don't realize we better put away money, because when Mashiach comes, we're going to need a lot of money, because we're going to owe a lot of karbanos. Okay. So Zok to Gemara weiter. So who she had 5 Suffolk. She had 5 Suffolk Leidos and 5 Suffolk Zivos, Mevia carbon, Echad, V'Achelas B'Zvachim, V'Ein Hashar Ala Achayv. Let's have a quick peek at how the Rashbam explains this. At the first wide line in the Rashbam, V'Ein Hashar Ala Achayv, Shebekushi Utiroi, L'Havi Chatasoif, Ala Suffolk, Kedei L'Tayim Suffolk Timasa. Even the first one, it was only a suffix. So it was with great difficulty that Chazal were even willing to allow her to bring one korban. Mishum dahi chatos as lo l'kvura, because you're not going to be able to be makriv that chatos on the mizbech. It's going to go l'kvura because it's a sofik if it's a real chatos, and you're not going to be makriv chulun lazar. The chivon the mitara b'korban echad, since she doesn't have to bring all of her korbanos that she's obliged to bring to get the hira, she will get her retired with one korban. It's like a mikveh. A person could have 10 different reasons why he's tamei, but if he goes to the mikveh, it's matahir him from all of those tumas. Dumi the isha tameya, the machai v'chamesh tevilos, with tefillah achas with with one tefillah, she will become tar. So therefore, since these are all sveikas and they're not absolutely necessary because one korban will solve her problem, suloi maisi chatas misofik le'avi le'veisapsul. You're not allowed to bring any extra korbanos. So that's if they were all sveikas. But what would happen if they were vadois? How about how you allow Chomish leidos vadois and chomish zivois vadois? So then again, mevia korban echad v'chelas b'zvachim. One korban will be enough for her to be able to once again eat korbanos. V'ashar aleh choiva, and the rest she does have to bring. So even though after one she can already eat korbanos, but she still owes those outstanding korbanos. Maisa. Remember, the whole purpose of us quoting this brisa is just to show us that there's a distinction between the word dinarei and dinarin. So Maisa va'amdu kinin b'Yerushalayim b'dinrei zahav. And here you see dinrei is zahav because dinrei needs the explanation of what the dinorim were made out of. So kinin, which means a pair of birds, the price of kinin got so out of control due to the demand that they were already charging a dinar zav, which was a huge amount of money. Anytime a woman had a baby and she had to buy a Torah and a yoina, she had to be shnei Torah or shnei b'nei yoina for her karbonis of chadas and oila, it was going to cost a fortune. Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says, I'm going to fix this once and for all. I'm swearing on this dwelling, meaning on the base of Mikdash itself. Im olin halayla, if I will go to sleep tonight until I bring the price down, achayu b'dinrin, until it comes down not to be worth a dinar zav, rather dinrin of kesef. And this is where you see that distinction. That dinrin refers to kesef, but dinrei refers to zav. And that's the whole raya. Now we're going to see what Reb Shimon ben Gamliel did. Nichnas, I wonder if he could have got charged for insider trading or for manipulating the stock market. Because Nichnas levezdin, he went into the bezdin and he paskined as follows: V'limoid, v'limeid, ha'isha shayola chomesh leidos vadois or chomesh yivus vadois mevia only korban echad, and then v'chelas b'zvachim ve'ein hashar ola chayva. So now he drastically cut down the demand for birds. So the price dropped like a rock. Now the Shaila, the more increasingly discusses how was he able to do that. You could be gozer, b'shavasei, but that's a whole Shaila in itself exactly how he was able to do that. But he did that. And what happened instantly, turning on Talmud Beis, the bird market crashed. V'amdu kinin boy beyoim b'rivasayim. They ended up becoming like a quarter of a dinar kesef, which means the market crashed tremendously and the cost of birds was tremendously devalued. You know, it's like throughout the generations, there are gedolim that said if fish is going to be too expensive for Yom Tov, it's going to be gozer that it's also for Yom Tov. And that brings the price of fish down. Baruch Hashem, the Rabbanim never decided to be gozer. If heating is too expensive, we're going to ask for heating. That Baruch Hashem they haven't done. Zok Gemara weiter. Kosov milamayla. So this is what I was referring to earlier. If higher up in the star it says one thing, and then in the center later on it says something else, the halacha is that you follow what it says lower down. So why did it say anything on the upper half? It's only to tell us that if there's some type of eraser or something that is not clear, lower down, you could use the upper text as a clarification to what it said lower down. So Tanarban Yilma Datachim in the Elyoy. But oisachas, you could only use that if one ois would be missing. So if we're going to suggest that there's one ois missing in something mentioned lower down in the star, that's what we will rely on and extract information from the upper nusach. But if two letters are missing, we wouldn't do it. What's an example? It says, who is the loiva? Who owes the money? Let's say down there it says Hanan, and up on top it says Hanani. So there could be two different people. Hanani, if it's, we would say that there was one yud, one letter missing from Hanani at the bottom, but it says Hanani at the top, it says Hanan at the bottom, we'll say the person that's referred to is Hanani, because one letter we would rely on the first line to give us clarification for. Or va'anon ma'ananei. Frek the Gemara, I don't understand. So if there was two letters missing, so if it would say Chan, if it said Chan at the bottom and the top it said Chanani, there you wouldn't say it means Chanani, you would say it means Chen. And you wouldn't say that you can also learn that we're missing two letters. Frek the Gemara, why? What's the reasoning? Like we're trying to understand why would two letters be a problem? It must be the problem would be is Dilma Misrami Shem Ben Abba Oisios. What if the name only has four letters, such as Chanani, and you're using the correction from the upper line to teach you half the name? Maybe that's too much, and maybe that's why we wouldn't allow it. But if that is the reasoning, well then even one letter should be a problem. Why? Dilma Misrami Shem Ben Ihochi Oisachas Nami. Dilma Misrami Shem Ben Shtei Oisios. What if the guy's name only had two Oisios? And there's only one letter written at the bottom because the other letter got erased. And now you're going to use the reference on the top to tell us what the name really was. Once again, you're also relying on the upper line for half the name. So that can't be the reason. You know why we don't want to rely on the upper level to teach us about two oisios that are missing? Is because Dilma Misrami Shem Ben Shlosh Oisios. We are afraid that there was a name that had three oisios in it. And you're going to be using the upper layer, the upper lines in the star to tell us roiv of what the name is. There, that much we don't want to rely on the first line. But half of the name we would be willing to rely on the first line. Zok to Gemara weiter. Amar Papa. Pshitali, it's pasha to me. What if the top line says Seifel? Seifel is like something of a flask, right? Milamala. So he wrote, I owe you a flask. I borrowed a flask from you. The Kefel Milamata. Kefel means a fold. So the Rashbam tells us it's probably referring to some type of beged that needs to be folded up. So what is this star saying? Does Reuven owe Shimon a flask, or does Reuven owe Shimon a beged? So the halach is hakoil hoilach achar hatach. You say that whatever it said on the lower line, that's the real thing. In other words, from the samach, there could have been a mistake, it became a kufr, vice versa. Boira Papa. What about kafel milamaylo usefel milamata? What if the word on top said kefel and the word on the bottom said tzafel? My, do you say it's an actual mistake and therefore it's a different name? Or michashinu lezvuv, or maybe it was really written as a kaf, and a fly flew and landed on the leg of the kuf and moved around, and now the ink transferred and it came out now looking like a samach. So therefore, would you say that it's the kuf? Maybe you go bust at the top. Eloi, Zoktum or Teku, that is a Teku. Ahuda have a cost of bay, Shit Mea Vizuza. It's at 600 and a Zuz. And the question is, 600 of what? Sholach Rab Shravya Kamed Abaye. So Rab Shravya sent to Abaye. What it means is Shis Mea Istri. It's 600 Istri, which are a very small denominations, a very small coin. Vizuza and this big zuz. Is that what it means? Or maybe it means Shis Mea Priti, or maybe it means 600 Prutis and the zuz. So the question is, what is this 600 referring to? That was the shayla. Is it referring to a larger amount, like an Istri, or a smaller amount like a pruta? Omerlei, it's for sure not pruta. See, normally you would say it means pruta. Why? Because you always want to interpret the star to mean the lowest amount. But over here, Abai said no. Dal priti. Don't assume it means pruta. Why? The loy kasu b'shtora, you wouldn't list that off in the shtora. The asuche maskala, what you would have done is, you're not going to tell somebody, I owe you 150 pennies. You're going to say, I owe you $1.50. So it's not likely that someone would list off prutos if it's 600. If it's 3 prutos, he might list it off. But 600 prutos, he would have already converted down to a larger bill. And that's how he would have explained it. Dal pruti like kasu b'shtar da suche maskanlahu. As the Rashbam says, da suche maskanlahu. We just look at the base in the Bach. Soimchen oison, is it soimchen or soichmen? Soichmen. Soichmen oison bedinyan. They would transfer it into dinan. Dinan should be less. The makam kuf tzadik beis prutois kosh nidar. 192 prutois is 1 dinar. So if it says 600, what's 600 divided by 192? It's 3 point something. So he would have said it's 3 dinarim and X prutois. That's how he would have described it, not by describing it with 600 prutois. Umash v'lahu zuzah, and he would have transferred it up into zuzah. So my amrit. So what are you going to say? Maybe it means shit meya istri v'zuzah. So what are you going to say? That it means the 600 has to mean istri, because that's already much more. Yad Bava shtar ala tachtoina. Zokt Rashbam, v'lesle ela istri, it's only istri. The inon kol istira palga dezuzah. Every ister is a half of a zuz, kach b'yishrach. So I'm not veneerly. So what is the loch? I'm not sure yet. I myself, I'm not yet clear on what the psak is. Veneerly, the zuzah yikabel. He's going to get zuzim. The isteri have a sloim. Isteri are sloim. V'yesh b'chol chad arba dinrin. In each shella there are 4 dinarim. Aval istera shiti inu. Vade have a palga dezuzah. So I'm not sure what this means. I'm going to have to figure this out tonight, and we'll report back tomorrow. Okay, we'll stop here.
How's it possible that it was early?
Very early, yeah.
How's it possible that you didn't have five supplicated with the prior? If she never became Tohar, how could she have another label?
That's a very good shayla. The Rashbam actually directly addresses that. So you could have another label just because you never became Torah. You tell me,
Would it be the same label? It's all part of the same label.
so the Rashbam actually directly addresses that. So if we go to Kuf Samach Vav Amar Aleph, the Rashbam says, "Bashar l'chayva u'chagoyin sheyolda lachem alois." As long as by a zachar it's 40 days, and by nekeva it's 80 days. As long as the second birth was 80 days after the first birth, it's counts as a new birth.
Even though she never became Tohar, but something came out
Correct.
80 days later.
Correct. But if she had a lady, that means it could be there were multiple bloodless inside her that didn't come out all at the same time. But if there was a lady surely the one carbon will cover her for both. So it is definitely discussed that child.
Sorry, Yosy, I lost my concentration. I mixed up your coffee. That's why it's not sweet.
Oh, but it was perfect. It was perfect.
Okay.
I enjoyed it. It was perfect.
Yours is very sweet.
Thank you.
No, not very, but I don't, for me, it was very, because I'm used to not having it with any sweetness.